Tomb Raider, a long-running series of puzzle action platforming games starring Lara Croft, one of the most known female protagonists in video games. It's also known for being redesigned and rebooted so many times they should consider the shoemaking business. Core Design was the initial studio behind the franchise, but nowadays Tomb Raider has been given to the developers at Crystal Dynamics, known for games such as Gex, Pandemonium or Legacy of Kain series. There are 10 games in the main series with 11th in the development. First 6 were made by Core before being handed over to Crystal. Why did that happen though? Well, the first 5 games spanned the lifetime of the PlayStation 1 and utilized the same engine used in the first game, updated over and over. Tomb Raider 5, Chronicles, came out on the PS1 in November 2000 when the PlayStation 2 was launching in Europe. Everyone was switching to the next gen. Core had big ambitions. They started development of the next gen Tomb Raider, the Angel of Darkness. It took 3 years to make and came out in 2003. I remember borrowing the game from my friend. I was super hyped to play it. Words cannot describe the disappointment I felt. It was bad. But it wasn't until recently I decided to read up a bit more and understand what happened. The team at Core had ambitions to remake the engine, remake Lara's character model, bring better animations and allow her hand-to-hand combat. The team split up in two. The experienced ones were finishing up Tomb Raider Chronicles and the new team worked on the next-gen project. When lead programmer Richard Morton came back to work on the new project, he found out that it was on fire. Developers and artists had barely anything done and the management kept throwing in new ideas for mechanics, so the team had barely time to put everything together and keep up. The game had plans for a huge storyline with 4 big locations, but they even cut it in half to 2, causing a giant mess in the game's story. Not to mention they were still learning the architecture of the PS2, which was a tricky one. A typical story of development hell, where there's a lot of noise, a lot of work, but ultimately little to nothing gets done. It was so bad that when Jeremy Heath Smith, the head of Core Design at the time, when presenting the game at a buyer's conference in 2002, he was swearing at the game when it was glitching out. I mean, would you buy a game like that when someone presented you with a buggy mess? The game was originally planned to release in 2002 but was pushed back to 2003. It still wasn't enough. It was being cut until the last moment as the team was pressed to release the game alongside the new Tomb Raider movie Cradle of Life. You know, the one with Angelina Jolie. Eidos and Core hoped that this would boost the promotion of the game. In fact, they cut content so fast, they actually left quite a lot of stuff in-game. There's a whole extra area in the beginning of the game, unused weapons, mentions of cut features like poisoning or even speed upgrades, which made Lara move a lot more responsive. But enough storytelling. Summer 2003. I got the game for PC. I installed it, but before I played it I paid a visit to the configuration utility. The fuck up was real. The graphics settings are the most messed up thing I have ever seen in a configuration utility. It didn't help that I had the game in Polish, but the hell is this? 32-bit XI... what? I'm 24 years old and I still have no idea which one of these is the best choice. Or what does it mean? And there's a lot of those here. Screen proportions? What's your monitor? 4:3? 16:9? Or 16:10, or maybe 1.33 or 1.78, or 4, or 2. And why the hell is there an option for monitor size? Why the hell does that matter? I get the idea that it's cool to have a lot of configuration options, but going overboard like this is not a good idea. Whatever, launch it. The main menu starts and hits you with in my opinion, the best rendition of the classic Tomb Raider theme. It's epic. After starting a new game, we get a more detailed story on what happens. Lara visits Von Croy in Paris, as he wants her help to find obscura paintings for his psycho client Eckhart. Lara disagrees, Von Croy pulls out a gun, something happens, and he's dead. Now Lara must escape the place who suspect her and find out who killed Von Croy. And our adventure starts, not in a tomb. The first chapter of the game is Paris, which, for the most part, is just a big tutorial area. A departure from the optional tutorial in the form of Lara's home in the previous titles. I can understand that, since Lara controls much more different than previously. For the worse. And this was one of the bigger complaints a lot of people had when the game came out. Lara controlled worse. For me, her movement felt sluggish, slow, delayed and awkward. The developers worked a lot on Lara's animation, and I will agree they look great, less mechanized, and she doesn't look like a puppet or a robot. The problem is, they designed the controls around these animations, not the other way around. Previously, all of Lara's movements were perfectly calculated. After a short period of gameplay, you exactly knew how far each type of jump will take you. You knew that one tap backwards would take you exactly one square behind, and quickly recognize what you can and cannot grab hold of. Here, not so much. One factor is the non-blocky level design. I like the idea that the levels are not built out of giant blocks anymore. The environment and levels feel way more organic and believable, but that doesn't translate well into distinguishing of what you can or cannot access. Add to that the issue with the implemented strength mechanic. Lara for some reason has now limited endurance when climbing things and a limited jump. Whenever you do specific actions around levels, Lara will say that she feels stronger, and say which body part feels stronger.
I feel stronger now.
Lower body grants you bigger jumps, and upper, extra endurance. The problem is, you can easily overlook and miss most of these upgrades, and since there is no going back, you're screwed. Of course, most of these upgrades allow you to access the secret areas in-game, but can be ignored throughout the main path, which kinda makes this mechanic pointless and obsolete. I mentioned that during development they were cramming in more features than they had time. One of them was stealth, the second hand-to-hand combat. Both feel half-baked. Stealth is basic, you press enter to enter stealth mode, making Lara move slower and become undetectable. In this mode you can use control to press your back against the wall and even lean from corners and doors. This is pretty neat, except sometimes Lara will randomly leave stealth mode and start running again. It always happens on stairs for some reason and sometimes just randomly, which can lead to you being spotted by the enemy. But the camera is your worst enemy actually, because it's hard to see anyone before they spot you, making these stealth sections in the game really hard. But if you successfully sneak, you can take down enemies in one hit. But most of the times you're gonna get spotted when sneaking, and if there's a wall between you and the enemy, you're screwed. Instead of beating the crap out of an enemy, you'll likely get your back stuck to the wall and get killed, since it's the same freaking key. Another issue I have with the game are the levels. They're tiny. First Tomb Raider game had huge levels that took you from 10 minutes to even an hour to finish. Here, they load all the time. This is especially noticeable when you're in the Parisian ghetto, a little sort of open world kind of a level, where it loads a part of it every few steps. Still, the idea that you can freely walk around, talk to people, hell, you can even buy and sell stuff, and that is really neat, even though it's very simplistic. That's why it's important to look for goodies in the levels that you can sell. They should have named this Shelf Raider, cause that's what it is. Even though some of them are tiny, they are a huge graphical step up from the previous games and look pretty good. The whole game actually looks pretty good. Lara's model, animations, environments, lighting, cutscenes. It's definitely a mix of both good and bad things. From good things, I actually need to applaud the sound and music guys. Voice acting is top notch and there is a lot of it, since you now have the ability to talk to other people and have options what to say next. Ambient sounds build up atmosphere and the music. Oh, music. It was composed by Peter Connolly and Martin Evenson and recorded live by the London Symphony Orchestra. I love the music in the game. It's very cinematic, almost movie-like, and it perfectly matches scenarios in game, often raising the tension. And because it's orchestral, it goes very well with the murder mystery theme of the game. If there's one thing that hasn't been a letdown, it's definitely the audio. But everything was overshadowed by one thing: glitches. Graphical glitches, control glitches, rarely game-breaking glitches, but when I played it years ago I did experience a few crashes where I wasn't able to progress. Overall, the game feels really clunky when it comes to quality assurance, and the chaos in production shows up in game. In the end, Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness is not completely terrible. It can be enjoyable through some parts. But it's also a great example of feature creep in game design. Instead of focusing on the core gameplay, they kept adding new stuff to the point of having more features, but none of them well polished. Good graphics and great music aren't enough to save the game from its gameplay problems. Poor stealth, poor combat, sluggish controls, cheap deaths. It's great that they had ambitions to take it to the next level, but what it feels like is that they took the first step, but forgot to make a second. It's a game in a sort of halfway transition state. To be honest, if Core had a chance to make another Tomb Raider game, I'm pretty sure they would have ironed out the issues Angel of Darkness had, because it's not a lost cause. Too bad that core design is no more.